let me get back to that big story of the day, and that is the transit bill, $1.5 billion that has passed, I believe, about 4 a.m. here in the state of Illinois. And we want to bring in the person who was ushering it through, and that is State Representative Kam Buckner. Thanks for being back with me today.
Hey, Anita, thank you for having me.
I should say congratulations to you. Yesterday when we talked to you, you didn't know, but you thought you were optimistic, let me say it that way, about the chances of this $1.5 billion transit funding bill making it through. Like I said, about 4 a.m. it did. So let's talk about what shifted from your original proposal to the final draft first.
Yeah, there were a number of small things. So the first proposal that we put forward for about, I guess, 48 hours ago now, had some things in there like a billionaire tax. It had some other taxing kind of structures in there that we thought were smart and balanced. But obviously, when you're doing legislation, you've got to get buy-in from both chambers and then the governor's office. And so that piece of legislation really triggered conversations to really ramp up. And over the last 36 to 24 to 36 hours, we've been meeting nonstop, finding ways to fine-tune this and create a piece of legislation that worked. We went from implementing any new taxes in the spaces that we were talking about earlier, including the billionaire tax and the amusement tax. We changed that into shifting some taxes that are already in the coffers, right? Not asking people to pay more for gas tax, but using some of the money on gas tax and pushing it towards transit. Just smart shifts, things that I think put Illinois in the forefront of doing things differently and doing it right. And so here we are. We passed, as you said, we passed the bill in the House at 2:30 in the morning. The Senate passed it at about 4 o'clock this morning. And so it's been a long couple of days, but I'm very proud that we got this done.
Well, be it that you haven't been to sleep very much, I certainly appreciate even more you taking this time out to chat with me about this. You talked about shifting the finances a bit, the funds a bit. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So no statewide tax increases, but Chicago area residents are looking at the sales tax and then also higher tolls. I keep hearing higher tolls, 45 cents more per toll that will increase with inflation. Explain that a little bit more, because a lot of people are a little bit shocked by that part.
I understand. I'll first start off by saying Illinois still has the lowest tolls in the country. If you drive in New York or Los Angeles or Philadelphia, it will cost you about $20 to get, from Brooklyn to Manhattan if you're going a certain way. In Illinois, we've been very smart about not having these high tolls that make it impossible for folks to get around. We also have a system where driving on a tollway is a privilege because it's supposed to be a faster way, but there are still always going to be in Illinois freeways to get everywhere you want to go. There are expressways that don't require tolls, and we all have seen that on our GPS systems when we use them. So that's number one. Number two is that our tollway system is used in a way that 25 to 30% of the folks who ride the system aren't folks who live in the state. They're folks from Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa, and Wisconsin. But lastly, the tollway was looking for a way to create a capital program where they could build new bridges and new roads and find a way to maintain what we have, right? And this was a perfect opportunity for them to tie into the work that we were doing. They were looking at a toll increase anyway. What we did was we tied that to the consumer price index. We put some money in there for transit since these things are related. And we are trying to find ways to create a network and a transit system that works for the entire state. And so that was the impetus of the toll increase. It is once again a percentage, so about between 30 and 40% per trip for the folks who ride the system.
And is there anything kind of looped in when you think about people who are like losing SNAP funding or, some type of, if they're on a fixed income, how does that work? Is there anything that's built in for people who may be struggling already?
So there's never been an income-based exceptions in Illinois' toll system. I've always said I'm willing to have that conversation and look into it, but the reason that we have not done that, and some folks in places like New York have done that, because you cannot in New York get from one place to another in certain places without a toll. In Illinois, there's always a free expressway option. The toll is just supposed to be the quicker way, right? And so that's been the impetus of why we have not done that, and that's not included in this bill, but it's something that me and my colleagues are definitely willing to look at.
Okay, let's go back to moving funds. So you diverted, as I understand it, about $860 million in sales tax revenue from motor fuel purchases that currently go to the state's road fund for construction projects. Now, some would say, in a light kind of way, that's like fixing one pothole but leaving another gaping hole. What is your response to that?
Yeah, so we've got to change the way we talk about this. The truth of the matter is that the state doesn't have a road fund. We have a transportation fund, transportation lockbox that was implemented through constitutional amendment in 2016. And what it says is that any money that goes into that lockbox can only be spent on transportation-related issues. Somewhere along the line, people started calling it the road fund, and they thought that the fund was only for roads and bridges and construction. It's never been true. And so while some folks have called it a fund sweep or a diversion, it really is a shift to using the fund for what the Illinois Constitution mandates that it's used for anyway, transportation expenses, which is not just roads and bridges and tollways, right? And so we're pushing it there. And a lot of the pushback really is around us trying to find ways to educate people on what the real meaning for this was. But what also is true is that fund right now has about $3.5 billion in it, just sitting there, right? And what's sitting there is pulling up interest, and a lot of that interest is going to be used in this bill on capital. Last year alone, there was $177 million in interest from that fund, right? And so what we're saying is, like, let's be smart. Let's take this good money and put it into good programs to make sure that we have a transportation network around the state that works for people.
So if someone was not watching our conversation yesterday, I would like you to explain or give us more details about the fiscal cliff and the situation that predicated all of this. So why are we here? What was the funding shortfall projection?
Yeah, we're here for a few reasons, right? We're here because previous to COVID, the way we funded transit in Illinois and Chicago just didn't work, right? We were required that 50% of funding for operations came from the fare box, right? So if people didn't swipe their Venture card and didn't put money, or in the old days, bus coins into the system, then we could not spend money. And that was fine when ridership was moving, but when ridership started going the other way, because there were issues with cleanliness and safety and reliability, that put a strain on the system. Then you add on top of that COVID-19, and COVID-19 happened, and we know that people stopped moving around as much, but that the train system did not stop, right? And so we begin to look and see that we were in some real trouble financially. COVID-19 did, however, come with some money from the federal government, those ARPA dollars, those recovery dollars. However, the recovery dollars dried up, and when those dollars dried up and ridership did not rebound, and we had a system in disarray, the result is a fiscal cliff where we've got a big gap that we have a hard time filling. We also know that people's behaviors changed, right? Folks were working from home. They weren't going downtown to their office building. That's not the way that people commute anymore. And so we had to look at how we do things differently. And that's what predicated this fiscal cliff. That cliff initially was $770 million in 2026. But after some number movement and things of that nature, RTA has shrunken the number of that cliff down to $200 million for next year. However, we still see that cliff at about $600 to $700 million in the 2027 fiscal year. And so what we had to do was to get in front of this, to find a stable funding mechanism for CTA, for Metra, and for Pace, not just so our buses and trains continue to run, but for the 3,500 folks who work for Metra, the nearly 11,000 folks who work at CTA, the 1,500 folks who work at Pace, who needed to be able to move forward with their life without worrying that a pink slip was coming this Christmas from their agency that they work for, because they had no stability and no understanding of what was going to happen with their budget.
I'm glad that you mentioned that at the end of your comments there, because the labor unions were initially against you and kind of came on board.
This is right. And this is, listen, it's part of the way legislation works. You put something out there and you to see how people feel about it, and you begin conversations. You use it as a framework. And eventually, you take great pieces from a bunch of different ideas and you create a piece of policy that hopefully works best for people. But the labor unions have been incredibly supportive in this last version of this effort. Whether it's the AFL-CIO or the Chicago Federation of Labor or ATU, which is the Amalgamated Transit Union, the group that represents the people who drive our buses and trains, who I've spent a lot of time with them and their members. This is a strong bill for them. It provides them protections. And this Christmas, once again, their members won't be getting pink slips. They'll be getting some certainty from their job. They can continue to feed their families based on the work that they do for all of us in the system.
Those are definitely some people who are behind you at this point in time. House Republicans, not so much. I'm going to be talking with the House Republican leader in just a moment here to kind of balance out our coverage. It looks like they wanted you to wait on this. Why not wait?
Yeah. Once again, for those 15,000 people I just mentioned who have to be able to make ends meet, they deserve to know that they have a job that they can actually still get paid for. For the west side and the south side of Chicago, that for far too long has been left behind when it comes to the way people move around the city and their transit opportunities. They can't wait any longer. For the 63rd and Racine Green Line stop that we're opening back up based on this legislation, those folks have waited, for 30 years to have that station. For the Laramie station on the Blue Line that has not been there and disconnected Black communities on the west side of Chicago, they deserve this, right? So I appreciate my Republican colleagues, and as you say, you're talking to the minority leader who is a great friend of mine. Tony and I are very close. We can't just keep waiting. We can't keep doing patchwork and kicking the can down the road. This is affecting our constituents. This is affecting the people of this state. And at some point, you got to stop talking about it and you got to be about it.
Well, and then there's Senator DeWitt, who wanted interest from the road fund or transportation fund to pay for public transportation. What's wrong with the way that he saw it?
I think many of the things that Don DeWitt put forth was actually ended up in this bill. Now, the question that you should ask Don DeWitt when you speak to him is why did he not vote for the bill, even though some of the things that he suggested became a part of it. I will also say, listen, transit cannot be a partisan issue. This is how we get around. And if you look at the bill that passed the House this morning, the third person whose name was on that list, it was Evelina Delgado, myself, and then Brad Stevens, who is a Republican member of the House, a leader who is from the village of Rosemont, who was an integral part of this conversation. And we took many of his ideas. Brad wasn't there yesterday because he wasn't feeling well, but if he was, he would have voted for it as well, right? And so listen, I think there are a lot of things that Republicans and Democrats can fight about and fight on, and we will continue to do that. I don't think transit should be one of them.
So you mentioned Rosemont, some of the suburbs. There's also the what's in it for me for like folks who live downstate. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. It seems like for some Republicans, the $129 million sales tax that should be going to downstate is far less than the $200 million they initially expected. What happened?
Well, when we ran the numbers, the number that the downstate system needed to be able to get over this hump was $80 million, right? And so we said we don't want to just make it patchwork, and we want to give them enough to actually make it work, right? And so there's 129 now, which is obviously more than 80 million. There is the 30%, I'm sorry, the $30 million that's from the interest of the road fund, which puts them at around 159. Their job is to fight for more for their people, and they should always do that, and we should always find ways to give more to people. The most important thing for me is that if we have capital projects that are actually moving and money that's not stuck in the queue, that people are finding a way to get shovels in the ground and shoring up their infrastructure. And so this is not over. This is not the end of this. This is a starting point. And as I told all of my Republican friends and colleagues there, I want to work with them to make sure that we can remain true to our word and give downstate what they need as well, because Chicago doesn't work with downstate, and frankly, vice versa. Downstate cannot work without Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go over reforms. Where do reforms end up in your bill? What in the final version of it, what are we looking at where that's concerned?
Yeah, so the reforms are huge. In fact, the reforms were the part that we spent the most time on. Last year, we I think had about 30 meetings between the Senate, the House, and the governor's office. We spent a lot of time with the House Working Group, hearing from folks about what was important to them. Senator DeWitt put forth a lot of these reform ideas on how we make the systems work better. So what has happened is we've had these bifurcated systems that have competed with each other instead of working together. RTA, which has been the umbrella organization to kind of pull these folks in, has not done a lot of planning and things that we thought created for smart systems and accountability, right? And so in this bill, there's a lot of accountability measures on data. We want to know what you're spending money on and if it worked, so we can go back to the table and figure out if we should keep doing that or not. There's integration of the system. And what do I mean by that? I mean fair integration, right? You don't have to use 4 different apps to get on the system. I mean scheduling integration. The Metra and CTA and Pace scheduling mechanisms actually working together. We right-size governance. Before we got here, there were 47 members of the CTA, RTA, Metra, and Pace boards. If you put it all together, it's 47 members appointed by a bunch of different bodies, and no one knew who was in charge. Now we've got 20 members, right? That's a big cut, and that cut is based on efficiency, about making sure that the city and the collar counties in the NETA region can all find a way to work together. And so, listen, when people talk about ghost buses and when they talk about not being able to call someone if something is happening on the train, we've got transit ambassadors now. When they talk about the safety and security, we've got a safety and law enforcement task force that's going to be working in this space as well. We are doing all the things that people have said that they want from a system that moves them around. We still got a lot more work to do, but I will tell you, Anita, this is the most comprehensive and consequential reform legislation when it comes to transit in the history of this country.
And who's on the board? Because it seems like there's some issues there in terms of who's on the board and who's not on the board.
Well, I don't know if there's issues or is legislation. There will always be some folks who have things to say about it, right? But the NETA board, the governor has appointments. The Cook County Board President has appointments for suburban Cook County. The mayor of Chicago has appointments, and there are appointments from the collar counties, right? So DuPage, Will, McHenry, Lake, and Will counties to try to have a balanced approach to this. The way RTA works today with all these different appointing agencies and all these different boards, once again, there's no continuity. There's a lot of chaos. This is intended to fix that, to streamline it so that we know who's in charge, we know where they're coming from, who they represent, and they can be both transparent and accountable.
Okay, now you suggested that I say or ask about things that were put into the bill that Republicans asked for, even though they didn't end up getting their vote. What else have you said to your Republican colleagues? What has the conversation been like in getting to this point, and who did join you in the end?
Well, listen, I have to give, as I said, a lot of kudos to Senator DeWitt, Senator Seth Lewis. Both of them have been part of conversations for the last 2 years, and they've given a lot of input. Right now, why they decided not to vote on it is, something that they've got to talk about and explain. I'm sure they have their reasons. I also have to tilt my hat to Leader McCombie in the House, who has for a long time talked about pushing partisanship and making sure that the majority is not the only people at the table. And she lent us, I think, one of her most dynamic superstars in her caucus, Brad Stevens, to help work on this issue. And Brad brought so much real life experience and expertise and balance to this conversation. And so, listen, as I've said, Anita, I don't really think that this is a Republican-Democrat fight. I think there are a lot of things that we will continue to fight about. I think when you talk to my friend, the Republican leader, she will tell you that even though she's probably not happy with some of the shifting of the funds, I bet you she will tell you that she's very happy that we didn't put the $1.50 delivery fee on the board in May. And that's something we can agree on, right? Just finding ways to be smart and balanced and working with each other. Because if transit doesn't work in Chicago or Savannah, Illinois, or Carbondale, Illinois, then the whole state is in a worse position.
All right, Representative Kam Buckner, we appreciate your time. Get some sleep.
I'm going to try. Thank you, Anita.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it.